Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our latest panel, New Approaches to Older Fiction. My name's Octavia Cade. I am the moderator here today, and I'm here with Emma Miyako-Candon, Daphne Strawcert, and Rem Wigmore. And if you would like to introduce yourself, please, in that order, and just tell us a little bit about yourselves, and if you rewrite or rework older fiction, this is the time to mention it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, hi, I'm Emma Miyako-Candon. I am largely a writer of long-form fiction books because I am not very good at being brief. But my very first book was arguably exactly this. Um, for a modern classic, I suppose, I was hired to write Star Wars Ronin, which was an iteration on one of the Star Wars Visions shorts from a couple years ago. Uh, which itself was like a reimagining of Star Wars through the lens of Japanese period piece cinema, and which is also somewhat infamously the origin of A New Hope itself, like George Lucas's relationship with that legacy of art. And so for me, it was a very recursive project, and I just love AUs and this kind of thing. But my next thing is less that, though I suppose it's also in conversation with another medium, mostly anime, because it's about giant robots. So the Archive Undying is coming out in a couple months. But yeah, that's me.
I'm Daphne Strasser. I'm based in Texas, in the United States. I am an author and an editor. I write speculative fiction, so horror, science fiction, fantasy, often with romance in it. I'm also a very avid fan fiction reader and writer. I've got several fan fictions, some of which are extremely popular that I've written before. So reworking other people's work is definitely part of what I do.
Kia ora, I'm Rem Wigmore. I'm a speculative fiction author from Aotearoa, New Zealand. So fantasy, sci-fi, horror, like same as you, often also with a lot of romance in it. I'm kind of breaking out a new pen name for that actually, but that is not the purvey of this panel. I had it all lined up in my head. The things to say, retellings. I have this office AU of A Midsummer Night's Dream where it's all set at like a Wellington not-for-profit office party, and they all get messed up on craft beer, which got a couple of like quite close rejections from a couple of places. And now I'm like leaning my career more like indie and self pub. I'm like, what do I want to do with that? So that's one project I have. I also have a short Dracula fanfiction story, A Fearful Hold, which is in What Music They Make. I've forgotten the title. It's not a hard title at all. What Music They Make works inspired by Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is a charity zine, and my gay little stories in there. And that was just kind of a collection that was like put together by someone on like Tumblr because of like the big surge of like fan work to do like with Dracula after Dracula Daily. So that's kind of where I'm coming at it. I write a fair amount of fanfic too, but I don't think about that as part of like my stable of works, I guess. But like obviously it is. Like my most successful works in terms of like readership would definitely also be my fanfic. Like, and I guess that's also a place where I'm coming at this one because this is a fan panel, which is a lot of fun.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Just as a quick sort of icebreaker question, going in reverse order this time, what's your favourite piece of reworked older fiction, and what is it that you really like about it?
Okay, this is me.
Yep.
Fantastic. I'm great at orders and clocks. I wrote down that my favorite was Bright Summer Night, which is another Summer Night's Dream adaptation, which is by the Candle Wasters, who are, or possibly were, a group of like young New Zealand filmmakers who were mostly women who did a bunch of like adaptations of like Shakespeare plays, starting out in kind of like the vlog format, a lot like some of the other adaptations that we'll go over later, but that kind of thing. And it started out when they were all like high school age, so it's really like kind of fun and interesting to see like people just like doing that and making these cool shows. But I like Bright Summer Night a lot because Midsummer Night's Dream is my favorite, and the puck is great, and like it's local, you know, like one of my friends was an extra and I could like see him in like the line to go to the bathroom in one of the scenes, and like the actress who plays like the Titania figure was at like one of the house parties at my old flat, but I was too shy to talk to her. It's that like 2 degrees of separation thing. But yeah, A Bright Summer Night by the Candle Wasters. I really dig it.
I'm gonna go with Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. The book that was put out quite a few years ago now, where it was the text of Pride and Prejudice, just with zombies inserted, and created a very good narrative for a zombie apocalypse fiction.
I wrote down like 5 different things when I was looking at this
Go
question.
for 5 if you like.
So my first thought was like, can I say Van Helsing? Like that movie is
Yes.
so wild, and I love it so much. It's so silly. One of my recent favorite things that was like a revisiting of classic fiction was this anime called Moriarty the Patriot, and like you can tell while you're watching it that the artist had just learned about Occupy Wall Street and was like, oh my God, I'm going to do something with this. Because they took Moriarty and they made him a criminal mastermind, but his primary objective is just destroying the upper class. And, he's using Sherlock as like his hero figure in this tale.
Oh
But
my God.
it's so good. It's so much fun. I also really like Cloverfield, which as a movie is really closely like in conversation with Godzilla, the original. Like, if you are familiar with both, it's just such a rich experience, and I love it to death. And then also, I have just started reading an arc of The Death I Gave Him, which is this Hamlet retelling that's really deeply bound up in both artificial intelligence and the study of senescence, which is the physical process of entropy as a stepping stone to the pursuit of immortality. And it just marries so beautifully with Hamlet as a character full of existential dread of the self and death. It makes me so happy.
All right, thank you. Well, this is a panel about older fiction, and part of the ongoing popular appeal of works like Dracula, for instance, is how heavily embedded the technologies of the day were in that text. Things like phonograph records and typewriters, although I note that Stoker did not use the biological technologies of vaccination of the day. Every time I read that text, I wonder why he hasn't put vaccination in it. But anyway, these things give the text a really modern feel for when it came out in 1897. So how are modern technologies being used today to rework older fiction? And because Rem talked about this in our pre-panel discussion, I'm going to let them go first on web series.
Yeah, so this is like where web series and stuff become really interesting, right? So like what I think of as like the big one that's such a cute cat is like the Lizzie Bennet diaries, and then also like the other stuff by that company, Pemberley Digital, I think they are, who had like a series of stuff like that. I've only actually seen the Emma one, but yesterday in preparation for this panel, I like lay down for an hour just binging Lizzie Bennet, which was great and slapped. And what I like about that kind of thing is it uses modern technologies to kind of very much reframe the story. So it's kind of like a story that is like a vlog, like the Lizzie Bennet diaries, or like the Carmilla web series is one I was thinking about a lot, which slaps as well. It's epistolary, right? The same way as a lot of older fiction, like Dracula, like all of it is, and like Frankenstein, obviously. But it's like epistolary in like the modern tradition, I guess, and it's also using technologies that the viewer in this case also has. So it's kind of that conceit, I guess, of this character is just another person like you, which is kind of a fun way to do it, kind of fresh, kind of zesty. I think that's what I like about them, as well as in terms of like if we're talking filmmaking, a lot of these productions then go on like they kind of always just started off doing like vlogs, and then they got like grants to do more like traditionally filmed projects with like other shots and stuff like that, and have like an original little musical and stuff like that. But it started out with the kind of technology that anyone can have at home, so it's maybe not quite as like it's not as accessible as just like writing stuff physically, and even just writing stuff physically, obviously, like to get fanfic out there, you need either like internet and a connection and stuff like that. But in terms of what kind of filmmaking you can do, it's more accessible than just having a film and putting it in theaters, right? So that's really fun and cool. The other thing that I think is interesting about this question is that, like, you get those very modern for the time technologies in Dracula, and I agree, and I love your vaccination essay a lot, Octavia, and I think that actually influenced another of my works, which is an original vampire novella, but definitely in conversation with Dracula, so I guess that's another one I'm doing. But those ones, they're very much like cutting-edge technology, right? Like Sherlock Holmes focused on cutting-edge technology at the time, the forensic science-ish, and phonographs, and then they have telephones by the end of it. But then a lot of the adaptations that we see linger on the aesthetics and trapping of the time, and you get that wonderful like gas lamp stuff, and you get the shots of like the brick roads and the horses and carriages and stuff. So it's interesting when you have any kind of retelling, whether you like dwell on those elements or whether you translate the work to a more modern context, which maybe keeps it truer to the original heart of the story, but also means you were the one making decisions, which inevitably means the story has changed. I'll let other people talk.
I think it is both something that I love to see, as well as it's maybe something that's been underutilized, especially the idea of using tweets or texts or message boards, Discord chats, to work with this sort of stuff. So like something like Much Ado About Nothing, where you have a lot of rumors floating around, would be really perfect for something that would be like an interactive fiction that involves messaging or things like that. And something I've always wanted to work on would be something like a dating sim that is styled after either Shakespearean or Jane Austen sort of stories, where you're having interactive fiction as well. And our technology allows for that, not just in how it's presented, but how you can interact with it as well. There's a Sherlock Holmes subscription service where you get mailed monthly mysteries. It's called Dear Holmes or something like that. And I think that's a really clever way of interacting with a fairly old piece of story while also having it, literally comes to your door.
I got just so physically excited by the idea of like any of these classics interpreted through modern epistolary. Oh, so good. I would devour that so quickly. But like when I was looking at this question, I guess the thing that came to mind was the way I had a professor who was really interested in the way that times of really like pronounced technological change seem to coincide with moments of intense sort of existential terror and how that's like present in things like Dracula, where there is this encroaching of modernity and this also underlying terror of the past coming up through the cracks.
Frankenstein as well.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Oh, Frankenstein's my personal favorite. So like, I love that tension, and so I would really, I think, like to see that poking up more in reinterpretations of these texts, especially when they're spookier. Because, oh my God, like, have you seen how many like ghost hunting shows we have these days? Because they're not just on the television anymore, they're all over YouTube. Like, influencers go ghost hunting all the time. And it's a phenomenon that I'm just fascinated by. And I would really like to see some sort of merger of that.
Which older text, I'm curious now, would you merge up with a ghost hunting show?
I don't know. I like literally any of the classic horror things. Like Turn It to Screw would probably be great, but Hamlet, yes.
Hamlet.
Like, oh my God. Make Hamlet hang out with his ghost hunting friend, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
So
he would have the worst time.
He always has the worst time.
Yeah, no, I would love to see something like that. Like maybe I should start working on something, but
you could do like a version of The Bachelor, but it's Darcy, right? So, or Bingley.
Oh,
it would definitely
yes. Dating reality television meets Jane Austen. Like,
That would be so funny.
what a perfect opportunity for people to be like kind of sarcastic and over it.
I'm just imagining like they do the confession booth with just like each of the Bennett sisters.
No.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
I think Mary Bennett in a confession booth would be strangely entertaining.
Would you even update Mary? Oh man.
Anyway, I suppose the advantage of using these older texts is that most of them are now out of copyright. I mean, the introduction of more works into the public domain as time goes by is in a lot of ways really active encouragement to rework this older fiction and basically update them for modern audiences. How do you think these reworkings make the original story more accessible to that audience? Daphne, please. If you'd like to
Yes,
go
I have
first
I have a
this time.
great, very recent example of this that I love, which is Winnie the Pooh recently came into public domain, and the first thing that happened was that someone made a horror movie out of it. And it is the worst kind of fun. It is such a terrible movie. It is such a fun ride. And it's something that, the only access people had to Winnie the Pooh prior to that really was just Disney, as well as the original stories. And so it's this, cutesy childhood thing. And now we've all grown up, and Winnie the Pooh isn't, as popular with young children anymore. And so to take something that's like beloved children's cartoon and pervert it in that way and make it this gory, disgusting horror movie really works, right? It's the same reason that we find clowns terrifying. It's taking something pure from your childhood and making it scary. And I think that there's lots of ways that can work, right? So not just with horror movies, but 10 Things I Hate About You being a retelling of I've completely lost it. I'm sorry. But 10 Things About You being a retelling of a Shakespearean tale as a modern rom-com that made it more accessible for teenage audiences and made it something that would actually be much more fun than what you're learning in literature class. I think that just reframing things in a modern sense or reframing them, Taming of the Shrew, thank you. Reframing them in just a modern lens makes them immediately more accessible.
Yeah, no, I think what's interesting and like what was immediately interesting about Dracula Daily to me was just the way it was taking the actual text itself, which is in some ways inaccessible, especially to younger people because of the way we're like training our species on attention span and like what's actually interesting and engaging to them that like no one's there's less and less engagement with the original text in its standard format because of the way we are just like shaping our culture and society. People are generally only engaging if they are deliberately doing that or they are forced to in class. So finding ways to reshape it in a way that is exciting for new audiences is one, like it's always a little bit brilliant, and two, like almost necessary in some cases, unless again it's someone who's specifically trying to be a student of it. um
Dracula is such a slow burn too.
yeah,
Like
I was
reading the
just
text.
uh while I was thinking about this question, I found myself thinking of like Renfield, which is a movie that's coming out. And like when they first announced it a while back, I was like, I'm not interested in this. It seems like they're somehow trying to turn him into a superhero. Great. I've lost interest in that genre. Then I saw the trailer and I lost my mind. I was like, this is so good. I am instantly enthralled. Whatever they're doing, I'm here for it. And then the reveal at the end with like the casting for Dracula, just inspired.
Yes, I'm excited about Ranfield. I'm excited about most Dracula stuff. This isn't the place to get into this, but later if it comes up, remind me to talk about Icelandic Dracula, aka Hornier Dracula, because it's one of my favorite things. Okay, we
Dracula
all love Hornier
translation.
Dracula.
Talk
Okay,
about it now
yes.
if you want.
I'll talk about Hornier Dracula
Yeah,
very
yeah,
briefly.
yeah.
What I like about piano adapt stuff is like, I mean, make it more accessible, but then also I think there's been maybe like one retelling of Dracula like focusing on Renfield, I mean like a novella or something, which like gets into like the mental health stuff and stuff like that. But I mean, what we haven't seen yet is something. I mean, it might be in that, I haven't read it yet, but something where like Seward, like the psychologist guy is a villain because he's obviously a villain because he sucks and he's committing these horrible experiments and all that stuff, which I would like to see. But also the thing about nowadays is like, I mean, the women in Dracula are like okay, they're there, but you can get retellings where they're not through that Bram Stoker's weird idea of women and society's weird idea of women lens, and also you can have more queer characters and stuff like that. Anyway, Hornier Dracula is amazing. So the basic story, as best as I remember it, is someone got the rights to like translate, serialize Dracula, I think, back in the day, like 1899, 1900, in a newspaper in Icelandic. So the guy, translated it, and like it came out in the newspaper, and that's all fine. And then ages later, people started figuring out, many decades later, people started figuring out that like what Icelandic people think of Dracula and like what we think of as Dracula were wildly different texts. It's called the I should have looked it up, the Max Arcana, Powers of Darkness, and I read it. Me and my partner read it by like alternating chapters and reading it aloud. And I mean, firstly, it slaps. Secondly, it's very interesting. People theorize that like either like because it has a lot in common with Dracula, but people theorize that maybe the translator got like an earlier draft or something like that. Like maybe they got like a first draft or something, because like the first like portion of the book, which is Jonathan in the castle, right? It's like the main thing in Powers of Darkness, but it's stretched out from like 30k to like 100. And then the whole rest of the story is like basically like recap chapters at the end. Like it's just summary. But that first part is made really tense and also like honestly terrifying. It's already quite scary, obviously, when you read it, like less so to a modern audience, but because there were things in the story that I hadn't expected, like they find like this dead woman outside and stuff like that. I was like legitimately like, because it was very scary. Other great things. So it's probably that was there to like, because that's the bit of the story that they had, so they fleshed it out and also made it more like kind of exciting. It's Hornier Dracula because there's all this other stuff where there's only one of Dracula's wives there, and there's a lot of stuff about her magnificent, what was it? Well, her bosom anyway, and like our boy Harker just like, oh, I am fainting and weak and stuff like that. And she has like a pendant, and the pendant is there to like draw attention to the Hornier Dracula is great. There's this whole storyline where like Dracula's walking Harker through like a portrait gallery and talking about, I think, Napoleon. It's been too long. Anyway, it's great and it's fascinating, and it's also fun because like that's my favorite part of Dracula. I do like the rest of it, but the stuck in their castle gothic terror is great, and that's also, I think, what Tumblr really latched onto when Dracula Daily got big. On that was like that tenseness of, oh, is our boy Jonathan gonna get out of this? The other fun thing about Horny Dracula, before I finish talking about it, is his name isn't Jonathan, it's Thomas. So he's Tommy Harker. He has a gun. He's Tommy Harker with a gun. He has a gun in a carpet bag, and he never uses the gun. It's Tommy Harker with a gun. And it's almost more fun because like he is this competent character, but there's still nothing he can do. So that's one of my favorite adaptations of Dracula, I guess. And it was like unintentionally an adaptation at all. Yeah, he has a gun. It's great.
That reminds me that the talking about Jonathan Harkness at the very beginning reminds me of an idea that I saw on Tumblr, which was to be some sort of retelling adaptation of Dracula, but as Jonathan Harker's like travel vlog or his like Instagram posts, where like because at the first he's just like on this like great trip to Eastern Europe. He's so excited. He's getting out of London. He's gonna do this like big like work responsibility, and so he's just documenting his vacation.
Yeah,
and so
to
he's
do
really
that enthusiastic about the food, isn't he? He's getting
much
recipe
paprika.
Right. And so you just have this like Instagram account where it's like his like his food pictures, the countryside, and it's just getting like increasingly more unhinged. Where you're like, is this Airbnb where you're staying? Like, is it legit or?
That's so fun.
I love that. I would love to see it.
Okay, so one of the most entertaining things about reworking older fiction clearly is this mashup between the new and the old in really entertaining ways, turning Jonathan's trip into a travel blog, for instance. But apart from just matters of, pure appeal and stuff like that, how have some of these new approaches grappled with existing challenges within the work, do you think? Can you think of any of these reworkings that function as deliberate critiques of the original work? I'm thinking here of, an example might be a fan fiction called We Need to Talk About Susan Pevensey by a writer called Dirge Without Music. And I read Narnia as a child. The book where Susan did not get into Narnia at the end was the only book I've ever thrown across a room. I was really annoyed by that as a child. So works that look at her, that rework, say, feminism and how it interacts with something like Narnia. What do you think about that, and how many examples of this have you seen, sort of reworking challenging elements to make them more, make them more up to date and appealing for modern audiences? Daphne, would you like to go first?
Yeah, if someone had something to say, I just wanted to give people a chance. There's a few things that spring to mind, but the biggest one is Lovecraft Country, which Lovecraft is the history of racism, and Lovecraft is something you can definitely research on your own. But needless to say, the entire weird genre has been colored by the problematic elements of it, and so to see BIPOC creators reclaiming weird fiction, cosmic fiction, or cosmic horror in a way that they, racism, like the other is not the bad guy. The racism component was never necessary for this. Having that sort of reclamation is really important. We also see that in modern adaptations, particularly TV adaptations, which will include more people of color, even in historic pieces that would have been all white, because it's not necessary to the storytelling to have it be all white. We know it was all white. It doesn't matter. We're not looking for a faithful historical Pride and Prejudice. We're looking for one that feels right. And so it's important to be able to update these things in ways that make the characters powerful and have agency, and gives especially queer or minority underrepresented groups, having them have the spotlight for once.
Yeah, the first thing that I thought of with this question actually is also Lovecraft, because like if you're gonna engage with him and you are not white, like hello. I was given a lot of Lovecraft to read when I was a kid because my relatives are from Rhode Island and they knew I like genre stuff. So it was only like as I got older, I was like, wait, this guy's like unhinged in a bad way. um, but Victor Laval's The Ballad of Black Tom was so refreshing to me because I had sort of like refused to engage with Lovecraft for years. And it's a novella, but it's so good. It's just like, I, I think I have written here, it's an enthralling fist in the face of Lovecraft's extraordinary racism. It's so good. And like, I realized lately, like, there's this uh, novella idea that I got excited about because it was like the first idea I had that was novella sized. And it happened because I had like heard of, and if you don't know about this, it's because you're not into like Gen Z stuff. And I'm not Gen Z, so I just heard about it through a think piece. Mr. Beast is the most popular YouTuber on YouTube. He's for a Gen Z audience. He went to Antarctica and he climbed a mountain which he named in the honor of Shopify, which a lot of people had a lot of feelings about. And I was just sitting there thinking, like, this is so interesting because, like, the history of Arctic and Antarctic exploration is driven by capitalism or by sponsors. And so you're always naming things after like the English lord who sent you down there. But, naming it after Shopify has like this special little dagger in the heart almost because it just murders the romanticism. And I was thinking about this and I was thinking about like, why am I remembering Eldritch Horror? Oh, right, Lovecraft at the Mountains of Madness. But like the thing I'm working on now is really much like a combination of these things, and it's very much an effort to look at this whole notion of the impossible to conceive and going, there's nothing impossible to conceive for the human mind except for the notion that other people might be okay even if they're not white. So yeah, Lovecraft almost like demands that you do something with it, or else people are gonna look at you funny.
As well
Yeah,
as just
anything.
really, it's really nice to just stomp on the dude's grave. Like it's just so
Yeah,
nice. Just to
do a
like
little
Yeah.
to
thing.
take like his entire worldview and be like, I can do it better than you, and show that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. I didn't have anything much for this one. But in a general way, I couldn't think of it. I'm very sleepy as a person. I have chronic sleepy as a person. It's fun with Lovecraft, because when I do engage in cosmic horror and stuff like that, it's from the angle of obviously a person with a lot of like mental health stuff and a lot of mental illness stuff, and it's like, well, would looking at some huge unknowable thing break your brain because like my brain's broken already? So does that mean I have like a powerful superpower, or does it mean like me or like whatever neurodivergent or mentally ill character I'm writing would be like more susceptible? And like both of those are interesting avenues for stories to explore. This actually makes me think what you said about basically like the colorblind casting that people do sometimes in like modern adaptations, and how that has like its pros and its cons. It reminds me of like Hamilton the musical, which is a whole big can of worms in itself, but kind of an example, I guess, of like a retelling of just like a real life thing, but a very specific interpretation of it. And it also makes me think about like Bridgerton, which is one of the main examples I can think of that does stuff like that, which is like so refreshing to see. And it's like, this isn't obviously this isn't nothing about like Regency as a genre is like meant to be realistic, because realistically there can't be this many dukes, the country would fail. But it's like a fantasy, so it's actually kind of nice. It's almost like a retelling of like that whole historical period, and then also people get to have the option to do a retelling and be like, well, people like me are going to be in here, there's going to be protagonists of color, it's great, there's going to be like queer characters, there's going to be all this, and then also people can still have the option to be like, well, here it is for white people and how great it was when everyone was a lord. And like there's both options you can take in a retelling in that genre, and it's interesting.
Yeah. It feels like there's when we come to this kind of adaptation or even just like storytelling in general, it feels like
Mm.
there's these two things that are kind of in tension with each other, and you end up largely aligning with one or the other based
Yeah.
on the needs of the project and whatever you're doing. And one of them is none of these marginalizations matter because I am using the absence of marginalization to do something. And
Mm.
another one is like, it matters acutely and I am talking directly to it.
Yeah.
And you know, like
Yes.
neither is better because it's a question of what is the specific story doing and what does it need to tell the story it's interested in telling.
Because sometimes what you're looking for out of these things is this kind of like romantic escapism.
Yeah.
I just want to experience it. If the feels and the vibes are in the right spot, I'm good. And what you're looking for some other times is to be like, no, historically, the like history, you were wrong. This
Mm.
is how, and I'm going to say exactly how.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like how like there are some queer stories you cannot tell in a world that is like blind to what queerness fundamentally means because no one's upset about it. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all about like what are you trying to do with the narrative?
Yes, I love both.
Yeah, I like the sense of option that you have, I think, with a lot of new approaches to this older stuff. And I think that's a good way to seg into probably one of the major transformations of older work, which is fan fiction. I just stopped off at Archive of Our Own before this panel just to check. As of present, they've got, close to 11 million stories there and over 57,000 fandoms. part of the non-profit organization for transformative works. It's, there in the title. They've even got an academic journal attached, and many of these stories, they're sequels, prequels, alternate universes, better endings. Many of them are these deliberate critiques. Some are just flat out strange, but a lot of them are really entertaining. So what are your experiences with fanfic, whether you read it or write it, and why do you think it's engaging for such a broad audience? Rem, if you'd like to go first, please.
Totally. It's really fun to think about this because technically I grew up on fanfic like a lot of authors of like around my generation did, right? Like I grew up on the internet. I grew up this was I think a slightly better time to grow up on the internet than it is now because at least we got the advice of like don't use your real name and stuff like that. I don't enjoy the culture that we have at the moment and I hope the kids are okay. But I grew up on the internet and it was great for me because I could connect with people and learn like social codes, which was difficult to do in person. And then now I'm being able to apply that to real life, right? And I grew up on like role-playing forums and stuff like that. So technically my first works were fan fiction, but they were fan fiction with original characters in the world of Neopets. I wrote for the Neopian Times, which was actually really fun because it meant, first of all, that I had this huge community of other people who were writing for that, publication on a virtual pet website who I could like look up to and get mentorship from like a very young age to be starting that. But also it meant that by the time I was like approaching it as like a professional or whatever in like my like teens or late teens or whatever, like the burning need to have my name in print was not as important because I was like, well, I've seen my username in print. So, and then I graduated from that to like Pokemon RPG forums, and that's when I started really writing because like you were meant to like write a thing, and then like the moderator would tell you what happened, and then you'd write the next thing, like I throw the Pokeball or whatever. And I was in one forum where the moderator just took forever, and I just started writing what happened next, and then I was like, oh, this is really fun. It's really fun to just write a story and then write the thing that happens next. And I'd always been like writing basically, but that's when I realized it was fun, which was a vital thing. So I grew up like those are fan works, but not like fan fiction. And then because I was like in writing communities from very young, I like very much started off with like original characters and stuff. And then when I started writing fanfic a little more, which I won't get too into because deadly secret, shush, 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 hush, hush, hush. It was like not, it wasn't like how I started. It was a thing I did afterwards. So it's interesting because it's a world I have a lot of experience in. So when I read like works, like published works today that like are in conversation with those tropes or coming from that experience where often like the pacing is a little different than in some other forms or like there's more lingering over emotion or more character work, which is what I like. It's looking at it as like someone who lives there but isn't like from there, I guess. Like my writing specifically isn't, even though it's been flavored by it, which is interesting. I think one of the appeals of fanfic is it is fairly accessible. Anyone can write it. Most people can like read it again if you have like access to the internet connection or like a local community probably. And there's a built-in like caring about it. Like normally if you're writing or reading fanfic, it's because there's something you care about so much, like some media property that you are obsessed with, which, neurodivergence. I have these cycles of very strong interests, so it's nice to be able to just binge about something. But as like a fanfic writer, the audience is already pre-built, so like they already care about the characters. So like a lot of your work is done for you already, which I think helps.
I feel like I have a somewhat similar, adjacent experience at least. Like I have written one fanfic. Technically, I have written two now that I've written that Star Wars book.
I was gonna say you did it professionally,
right?
Yeah,
and it's funny because I don't really write fanfic, but I always considered the fanfic writers and readers my people because what I was interested in was like the original fiction. So it'd be like my gateway to be like, oh, you write? What else do you work on? What's your original thing? Tell me about that. And like that was my fandom. And so like the one fanfic I wrote it's a mega AU. It's like so AU that I consider it a thing I can cannibalize and turn into original story. Easy peasy one day. But like I am intensely attracted to AUs, and that whole impulse, I sympathize with it completely because it's also what my brain likes to do. And it's probably similar to like the game I'll play with my wife after like we've consumed something that's like almost what we want it to be and not quite, we go, all right, let's play the how would I do this game. And that is itself an act of fan fiction because it's reinterpreting your relationship with a story and like, maybe that didn't work for you. Maybe we need to talk about Susan. um, right? So, like, that's definitely the kind of fanfic that I resonate with. And it connects to like what excites me about revisiting old fiction through different lenses. I get, perhaps this is obvious, so excited when something is really finding a way to leverage the already extant themes in some new and uh, indulgent way.
To what you guys had said, like the bar for readers getting into fan fiction is lower because they already know who our characters are, so you can actually just jump straight into the narrative, which is something you can't do in original fiction. You have to build up your world, you have to build up your characters, and when you don't have to introduce all of that, you can cut straight to the good stuff. And I think that's part of what makes fan fiction so popular, as well as like fan fiction is typically associated with newer sources for the reason that if you are writing about sufficiently old sources like what we're talking about, technically you're just writing fiction because you are using public domain stuff. You could publish it. And so what relegates fan fiction to the back forms of the internet is the fact that you can't publish it because it's someone else's intellectual property. And for that reason, it's looked down upon, which it shouldn't be because there are a lot of very excellent writers in fan fiction, but it's seen as fairly undignified because, oh, you're not even creating your own stuff, which is completely absurd. But fan fiction that is sufficiently divested from its original material through AUs, through out of character writing, is just fiction. That is you writing your own story. If you have enough original characters, if you have enough characters out of context, and if you have enough new setting, that's just a story. You're just writing a book. And you can say that it's a John Watson, Sherlock Holmes romance all you want, but if they're nothing like the original content, it doesn't matter. You're just writing a romance. But people will consume it because it's fan fiction and they already know who these characters are, and you can make some assumptions about it. I love fan fiction. I'm really passionate about it. I think that it's a really healthy exercise, but especially when we talk about old stuff, you're going to find much less of that on fan fiction sites because you don't have to go to fan fiction sites to see it. Like the big five publishers are putting out new versions of old classics all the time.
Yeah, I have to say, and because Emma had said in our pre-panel discussion that Frankenstein was a favourite, I quickly looked up Victor Frankenstein on AO3 and there was about 2,300 different works, which is far, far less than I would have picked. Yeah. So we are coming down into the last sort of few minutes of this. So before we go, can you recommend each of you a new approach work to the people watching the panel? And maybe what new approach work do you really want to exist that doesn't yet? Emma, if you'd like to start.
So just circling back to Star Wars, so Star Wars Visions was the thing that I like wrote for. They're coming out with another season in like 3 weeks. I'm so excited. I love animation as a medium. I think it's ripe for reinterpretation. It does such innovative, gorgeous things with the way it reshapes the telling of stories. And for a story that's like deeply involved with cinema, as Star Wars is, both because of like what it's drawing from and the legacy it created, it's just amazing to see like so many different studios reinterpret elements of what Star Wars has been culturally like as modern mythology. So I recommend that. And also, I guess I really want someone to do modern ghost hunting and Shakespeare. That sounds amazing.
Daphne, please.
So for my recommendation, you made me think about animation, which made me think about manga. I'm going to put Alice in the Country of Hearts, which is a manga retelling of Alice in Wonderland with romance thrown in, and it's good stuff. They have several versions of it: Alice in the Country of Clovers, Alice in the Country of Diamonds. So I recommend that. And what I really want to see, I want to see a dating sim. I really do. An Austen dating sim. That's what I want.
What I am going to recommend is something I didn't even think about until I saw this hanging on my corkboard before I took my corkboard down because it was distracting. This being the Blorbo card I made of Captain James Flint from Black Sails. I'm recommending Black Sails, but only with about 1 million caveats, which is that it's heavily violent. A lot of sexual assault in the first season that then they just stopped doing for the rest of the seasons because they wised up. But Black Sails is fascinating because I don't think of it as being a transformative work, but it's a prequel to Treasure Island. All of the characters, it's like, how did the treasure get here? Well, here's all these characters from Treasure Island. But it's actually also just this very fun golden age of piracy. What do you do when obviously the colonial powers suck, but then also these pirates are jerks and everyone is a jerk, but also you root for them because they're great, some of them, but then they're jerks. It's a lot of fun. It's extremely compelling. It's really got one of James Flint is my baby girl. He's my Blorbo. He's my Meow Meow. I'm rotating him in my mind, as is John Silver. The John Silver in that show is fascinating. I couldn't think of what I wanted to have, but I would love more Age of Sail stuff because I think it's fun when there's characters on boats.
Well, I suppose the great thing about writing fiction about the Age of Sail is you don't have to worry about, special effects.
Yeah.
One thing.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, no, go, Emma.
I saw on Tumblr just a bit of an interview, I think, with the actors of Black Sails, and they were being asked, "Would you ever do the adaptation of Treasure Island?" And they're like, "No, can't beat Muppet Treasure Island."
It's true.
Yeah, the Muppets, honestly, the Muppets need to do just about anything that's public domain. Like, I would watch it.
Oh,
Like Muppet Christmas Carol is the Christmas Carol. We all know it.
Muppet Pride and Prejudice would be fantastic.
Please. Muppet Frankenstein?
Yeah, Muppet Dracula. God.
The only human
Miss
actor
Piggy
would
is
be
Nina Harker.
Yes.
Oh God, this is amazing.
I want it. I want it. I don't care what they make.
You deserve it.
Muppet anything.
The Muppet Odyssey.
Oh no.
Sing your muse.
Okay, well, we've got 3 minutes left, so if there is any audience member who'd like to ask a question, we could probably fit one in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, also, all the panelists, you guys are really interesting people. If we could go around and just say where people could find us online.
Sure. Well, would you like to start then, Daphne?
Oh, okay. I can put mine. I'm everywhere as Daphne the writer, and you can find me at daphnestrasser.com.
Rem, please.
Nice. I'm on Twitter as @FayWriter until Twitter implodes, and then after that, I will continue to be on Instagram, just Rem Wigmore, and my website is remwigmore.com, where eventually I'll have a newsletter, and then when I republish my own books and stuff, it'll go out through there.
I am sporadically on Twitter at Emma Candon, and more frequently on Tumblr because it's where the weird internet lives in a good way. So you can find me there at emcandon. My website is also emcandon.com. I'm technically on Instagram. I have posted 5 things and not posted in years. I think it's funny that way. So,
Yes.
yeah, that's where you can find me.
Well, I think that's probably getting close to it. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to Daphne and Emma and Rem for turning up and having a wonderful discussion, and enjoy the rest of the convention.
Good chatting, everyone. Thank